And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios, which is not far from where Steve Garvey lives in Palm Desert. Mr. Randy Weggs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, I spent the last 2 days listening to a debate between Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter, and I've got nothing to show for it except this new drop.
Don't believe the BS.
Any more food talk?
Well, we did play you the one from yesterday, but believe you me, she always wants to make sure that you think about feeding her kids.
And how messy her minivan is. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. She is a columnist with the Southern California News Group, which, of course, is the LA Daily News, the OC Register, the Riverside Press Enterprise, and most importantly, Randy,
the Redlands Daily Facts.
She's also the host of the Howard Jarvis Radio Show, which airs Monday nights right here on AM 790 KABC. You can follow her on Twitter at Susan_Shelley. Susan Shelley, welcome.
Thank you, John. Great to be with you.
Well, let's start with the big news that Steve Garvey is now running for the U.S. Senate in California as a Republican. Your reaction?
Well, I think this is because of the top two primary math. If there are really going to be four major Democrats running, I'm assuming that the new incumbent senator will announce sometime before December 8th that she's going to run for re-election. If they all stay in the race, that divides up the Democratic vote, and the top two vote getters, regardless of party, go to the general elections. So hypothetically, you could have a well-known name, a self-funded candidate like Steve Garvey. He could end up in the top two, and then it's a whole new ball game. Granted, it's a tough playing field in a statewide race because Republican registration statewide is 23.8%. However, there's a good solid 40% that will vote for a Republican. That's never enough to win, but it depends on who he would be running against and how radical that person might be or be perceived to be. So anything could happen here.
Do you think anyone under 40 knows who he is?
Well, I think they will. I think they will know who he is. There will be a lot of advertising, and we'll see how that works out. But there is name recognition. I think really the story here is what the Democrats do in this situation. I would imagine there'd be a lot of pressure for Adam Schiff and Katie Porter to maybe decide to run for re-election instead. I don't know if they would even consider that, but they still could because the filing period is December 8th. It closes December 8th, and everybody can take a step back and rethink the whole decision to run for the Senate, and they could have just two candidates or maybe just one incumbent candidate, and then no Republican would be able to beat that person according to everything we've seen in California politics.
Last hour, we took calls from people who live here, people who vote here. What do you think about Steve Garvey running? And I posed many of the same questions I just asked to you to them. And one gentleman called in from Whittier who happened to be a Latino, and he said that in the Latino community, they all know who Steve Garvey is because Steve Garvey was with the Dodgers all through Fernando Mania. And that was such a point of pride for the Latino community when Fernando Valenzuela had the city in the palm of his hand and was doing amazing things out there at Dodger Stadium and became an international phenomenon that Latino residents here in California followed every aspect of that season. And Steve Garvey was part of all of it, and they have warm feelings for him. It could be interesting to see what the polls say if there's any movement at all, if that love that they have for the Dodgers will reflect well on Steve Garvey as a candidate, and he'll do better among the Latino voters than Republicans typically do.
That certainly could be the case, and it could be that San Francisco voters will vote against him for the same reason, but they're all Democrats anyway, so that doesn't matter probably. But it's He's a celebrity. He is a well-known name. He's certainly a better-known name than any of the other Republicans who might be running in California. So he starts with better name recognition than most and resources to run. We'll see. At this moment, you have kind of that empty vessel situation where all you know is the name and you don't know his positions on controversial issues. He's never held elective office. We don't know where he would come down on judicial nominations and foreign policy decisions. It's all really an unknown, and it would be interesting to see him in a debate and see what his thoughts are about all of these important and serious controversies.
How do you think the Democratic candidates treat him? And I say that because if there's 3 or 4, depending on what LaFonza Butler decides to do, and there's one Republican with any degree of name ID at all, that Republican is a threat of making it to the November ballot and leaving 3 of the Democrats off that ballot. I think right now they're all assuming that 2 of them will get on. Do you think they ignore him? Do you think they attack him? And if they attack him, that could backfire. Because if you're a Republican voter and you don't know what to do in this race, and Adam Schiff is everywhere saying nasty things about Steve Garvey, then you're probably more inclined to vote for Steve Garvey than you otherwise would be.
Well, I don't think they'll be nasty to him until after the primary is over, because they're all going to want his endorsement. If he doesn't make it into the top 2, they will all want his endorsement. So they'll tiptoe, I think, around it. But to me, the most likely scenario is that there's just an enormous amount of pressure in the Democratic Party to get people out of the race. And I don't know how they'll do that, because everybody's pretty well invested and they've raised money and they're very committed to it. But that, I think, is the most likely scenario, because the math really hurts the Democrats, and that top 2 is just very unpredictable.
Well, the other option also is to get out of this race and just run for governor, because it really is the JV team that's running for governor. We're used to having these big political personalities, people like Gavin Newsom, Jerry Brown, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and now it's a lieutenant governor that's a billionaire, but no one's ever heard of her. No one knows anything about Eleni Kounalakis. You have a termed-out controller in Betty Yee. You have a state superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurmond. No one's ever heard of him. If you're Adam Schiff or you're Katie Porter and you've been spending all of this time developing name ID in a race that's now too crowded for you to win, dropping out of that race and running for governor may be the ticket.
Well, that could certainly happen. It's very expensive to run a statewide race, but they're both statewide races. So if you've raised the money for one, you could do the other. That could certainly happen. And Steve Garvey could run for governor. Same thing. He could build an organization and raise a lot of money, and he could run for governor. But there again, we don't really know his positions, and we don't know the depth of his knowledge on state or local or national issues. So it's all sort of to be announced, which is an interesting thing. So much at stake in California politics, and we have a brand new senator. We don't know where she stands on anything. I don't think we've even seen a financial disclosure for Senator Butler. And now we're going to have candidates for the Senate that we don't know, and perhaps candidates for governor that we don't know very well. There's a lot at stake, and we don't seem to know very much about a lot of these people.
We're speaking with Susan Shelley, who you can follow on Twitter at Susan_Shelley. Susan, let's shift gears here for a second. Israel was attacked by Hamas in what was an unbelievably bloody terrorist attack on their people. Women, children, raping, torture, everything awful that you can possibly imagine happened over there. Some of those awful deeds were recorded and posted on social media. It's really so horrific, it's hard to describe accurately. Given that, we have seen domestically the Democratic Socialists of America hold rallies in major American cities, New York, San Francisco, Seattle, in support of Hamas and in support of what they did to the Israeli people. We've also seen similar things happen on college campuses, including one that's going on right now as we speak at Long Beach State University, where they are having a demonstration in favor of what Hamas did in Israel. If you are the president of that school, you're the president of that university, your job is to educate these kids. Your job is to make sure that they have the knowledge and the skills that they need to be employable in our economy and be the next generation of Americans so they can take this campsite and pass it on to the generation after them better than they found it. However, if what you're teaching them leads them to believe that Donald Trump is Hitler, but what happened in Israel not long ago is perfectly acceptable, something you're doing is very wrong. Do you think any of these universities are going to self-reflect, given the fact that they're all being embarrassed? And it's not just Long Beach State. It's happening in the Ivy League institutions. It's happening at New York University. This is not an isolated thing. This is what's going on right now on the college campuses. And clearly their administration doesn't like the negative attention that it's bringing them. I know that Larry Summers over at Harvard is appalled at what's going on there. But being appalled is one thing. Fixing what you're doing that's wrong and doing something different is the way to make sure this sort of thing doesn't happen again in the future. Do you think they're going to do that?
I think if they're pressured by the donors who support their endowment, by the alumni, by the corporations that pay for all those foundations with their donations, I think if they're pressured, they will back off. And I would hope they would not support rallies that defend slicing the heads off infants in Israel. I think I can't believe they know what they're supporting. I would like to think they're just ignorant. I'm probably too optimistic in that. But there is hope that the universities will wise up, because we did see that at Stanford Law School, I think it was, where a federal judge was invited to speak and then was shouted down by the class. And then one of these diversity professors jumped up and started slamming this federal judge. And it was completely out of line. And as the university apologized, the dean of diversity, who is so obnoxious in the classroom, I believe is no longer employed there. I think there's hope when it goes to such an extreme that it's absolutely indefensible. And anyone who is protesting in favor of what Hamas is doing, they're so evil, or they're so ignorant, or both, that they are a danger to the community. If they think that that's an acceptable way to make a political point, then that is an extreme danger. And I hope that the FBI and the national security apparatus pays a little attention to people who are defending terrorism and stops paying attention to people who are defending patriotism. I hope they get their act together in federal law enforcement and stop bothering the people who are walking with American flags and start going after the ones who are defending Hamas. This is not a joke. This is a very serious danger, particularly since we have an open border and we've had military-aged men coming over, and we don't know who they are or where they are at this point. And we're standing at the airport with our shoes in our hand because we're still worried about the 9/11 terrorism, and they're letting people in from countries that are associated with terrorism, and we have no way of knowing where they've gone. They've all been released into the United States with a notice to appear in 5-10 years. This is very dangerous. And I really shudder to think what could happen in the United States as a result of these reckless policies.
Well, and it also just shows you how much we've jumped the shark with how we react to things we don't like in this country. Anything that you don't like is Hitler. Someone says a joke that you don't like, they're Hitler. Someone wants the tax rate to be something different than what you want it to be, they're Hitler. Someone votes on a piece of legislation the opposite way that you want them to vote, they're Hitler. But when you have a group of people who are literally going door to door, going to music festivals, and trying to exterminate the Jews, that's fine?
It's not fine. And the only silver lining out of this at all, and that's really not the right phrase because this is so hideous, but the only thing that will come out of this is that Israel will stop the partial suppression of terrorism, and they will go all the way, and they will destroy Hamas, and that will be the end of this problem. They've always been restrained by the international community, as if Israel alone in the world does not have the right to self-defense, that it has to worry about what the UN says, when and for how long and how much it can defend itself. Well, no one cares in Israel right now what the UN thinks, and this is war. This is the first declaration of war since 1973, and they are going to fight it, and they are going to win it, and that's going to end the problem.
Let's go back to Long Beach State for a second, because that's going on right now. And I've been watching what these university presidents have been doing in response to this. Larry Summers over at Harvard, I believe, is a former university president. He has been tweeting about it quite prolifically. The current president seemed to be putting out weak tea statements denouncing what happened in Israel, but equivocating here and there. It's a both sides sort of thing. And I was trying to think, if I was the president of Long Beach State, how would I handle this? And I think I would probably get out of my office and go down there and just talk to them and try to figure out what is wrong with them. Show them the videos of what happened over there. Showed them what went on to the babies that were beheaded and the women whose bones were broken and they were put in the town square, people who were set on fire, and say, this is what you think is okay? Because I can't think of anything else. What would you do if you were the president of Long Beach State?
If I was the president of Long Beach State, I'd find another line of work at this point. I don't know if this is a redeemable situation. People have been miseducated for so long about the history of Israel, the real history, and what has gone on. If all of these nations that have refused to recognize Israel's right to exist, its right to exist, and we were getting close to peace deals with. We had the Abraham Accords under President Trump, and there have been recent talks between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and recognition and peace was coming, and clearly this is an attempt to completely disrupt it by provoking this very justified and severe Israeli response, and then using the response as an excuse for 2 more generations of murderous hatred. It's a very sad situation, but the only way to deal with it is with full truth on all sides, and we haven't had that. We've had people, as I said, miseducated about what is going on there and the sovereign nature of Israel versus a terrorist organization that has been trying to destroy it from the day it was declared. So the only thing that can be done here is to fight these terrorists till they are powerless, till they have nowhere to hide, nowhere to operate, no funding, no weapons, no harbor. That has to happen now. And then the rest of it, re-educating people who have been miseducated, I don't know. Maybe they're going to go to their grave eventually, not still thinking that Israel is the oppressor here. But that's not the case. The truth is different. And I hope that one day people who have gone to college and been so miseducated will find self-education, will find later education, will read a book and learn what really happened. Because this is extremely dangerous. And to find people protesting on an American college campus in favor of massacres, that's what they're doing. They're protesting in favor of massacres, is beyond depressing. And I really hope that the university denounces it. And I hope that some of these clubs that are advocating these policies and these protests, I hope that they are defunded by the university as hate groups, because that's what they are. And that shouldn't be. This is the genuine hate group. This is not a joke we don't like. This is the genuine article defending massacres. That is a genuine hate group. And they should not be funded with either tax dollars or university dollars or donor dollars. They shouldn't be funded. And they have a First Amendment right to say what they want to say, but no one has to pay for that microphone. And I really hope that the universities think this through and do what they can to stop it.
Sometimes it takes a lot of education to be that stupid.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis Radio Show, which you can listen to Monday nights right here on AM 790 KABC. You can follow Susan on Twitter at Susan_Shelley. Susan Shelley, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you, John.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, we've got a brand spanking new app.
That's right. It's the new KABC app, the best way to listen live to this radio station and to listen to the podcast of this show. Just go to Apple App Store or the Android App Store and search for KABC AM, and you'll be able to download it, and then you can listen to all the podcasts. You can listen live. It's so easy to use. You won't believe how easy it is.
I cannot believe it, quite frankly.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes Adam Sandler to the Acrisure Arena on October 21st. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
Steve Garvey joins us at 2:35, but coming up next, it's the KABC Crime Blotter. Steve Garvey joins us at 2:35. But right now it's time to open up the KABC Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, today's edition takes us back to a jewelry store.
Wasn't Karen Bass just saying yesterday with Mark Brown that you don't really see the smash and grabs anymore?
Apparently she watches Turner Classic Films.
Because there was a smash and grab at a Manhattan Beach jewelry store, but these Manhattan Beach jewelry store owners decided, you know what, I'm pulling out my rifle or a handgun. For more, here's ABC 7.
A group of smash and grab robbers stopped by a jewelry store worker with a gun. Shocking new surveillance video showing the robbers running as soon as the worker fires right at them, chasing them out of the store. Eyewitness News reporter Shayla Girardin live in Manhattan Beach with more of that video and what happened next. Shayla.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a surprise for those thieves. They went sprinting out of this building, but not before they got away with some jewelry, and the search still on for those suspects. Chaos erupting in a Manhattan...
That was 3 swooshes, in case you're counting.
One for each gunshot.
Chaos erupting in a Manhattan Beach jewelry store as crooks break in, smashing the glass with hammers and stealing jewelry. The robbery happening...
Would Gascon describe that as a nonviolent crime?
Oh, yeah, they were just doing some early Christmas shopping.
Smashing the glass with hammers and stealing jewelry. The robbery happening Saturday afternoon at Prestige Jewelers in Manhattan Beach. You can see the 5 crooks dressed in hooded sweatshirts sprinting into the store with empty bags. Seconds later, filling those bags with boxes of jewelry as terrified shoppers watch. Finally, a store employee using a handgun to fire toward the suspects as they run away. The store was the target of a similar robbery in 2014. The suspects wearing ski masks and stealing several items of jewelry. Today's incident comes on the heels of numerous smash and grabs, including this attempt in August. The suspect entering an El Monte jewelry store.
Hey, that's our guy.
Yeah, we had her on the show after it happened.
The suspect entering an El Monte jewelry store and smashes, but is grabbed by the family that owns the store, running away empty-handed and shirtless. Just last month, the LA County Board of Supervisors responding to the issue, voting to allow the Sheriff's Department to accept a $15.6 million state grant to support the department's organized retail theft task force.
And guess which agency did not apply for the grant money?
That's right. The one run by George Gascon.
Quite frankly,
don't buy this stuff. Don't buy this stuff. And don't get caught either selling it or buying it because you could be arrested for it.
Now, we do not know if those suspects were hit by the gunfire, but anyone with information is asked to reach out to Manhattan Beach Police. For now, in Manhattan Beach, Sheila Girardin, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
People are taking the law into their own hands because they feel helpless.
Okay, so a couple of things about this one. This is the radio, so you can't see the footage of the robbery taking place and the shopkeeper opening fire on the robbers. Couple of things jump out at you. First of all, the people who were shopping in the store, they're terrified at what's going on. The other people who were working in the store as the store was being robbed and the gunfire was being sprayed, they looked totally casual. Did you notice that too, Randy?
I did.
They didn't even bat an eye. Now, there are people who are cool as cucumbers when they're on an airplane and there's turbulence or they're dealing with some kind of stress. I've got a little Don Knotts in me. I would be all over the place. But my God, first of all, what do you think it sounds like when they hit the glass with the hammer? That's got to sound like an explosion. I can tell you this. When I go golfing at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm playing at my golf course that's in a trailer park community, manufactured home community, and I tee off, and instead of going right down the middle of the fairway, I go off into the homes, and you hit aluminum siding with a Titleist in a canyon at 7 in the morning, it sounds like a bomb went off. Can you imagine what it must sound like to hit a thick piece of glass with a hammer and have it shatter?
Well, the first time you hear it, it would be quite shocking. But the 20th time you hear it, you're used to it.
One of them looked like he was continuing to drink whatever it was that he was drinking. He went for sips. And then there was the shopkeeper who pulled out the gun and opened fire. There were, 5 crooks who were in that store?
Yes.
Okay, he wasn't that far away from them. I'm trying to describe how far away. Maybe he was as far away from them as, I don't know. I was going to say between me and you at the radio studio, but they've never seen that either. Maybe 15 feet away. Maybe that's an accurate description.
Yeah.
And that guy just unloaded that gun from 15 feet away, and I don't think he hit one of them.
That may have been on purpose. Maybe he was trying to fire warning shots. Maybe he wasn't trying to actively kill somebody. I don't know. I mean, you got to be worried that if you end up shooting the robber, Gascon's going to come after you.
No, but if you're firing a warning shot, you shoot that into the air into an Air Malaysia plane. You don't shoot it in their general direction. But that guy had any number of shots, and I don't know what that parking lot must have looked like, but if there was a Nissan Altima in that parking lot, it looks like the Bonnie and Clyde car.
Well, let's go ahead and check what we can find out right now to see if the Nissan Altima is in the parking lot.
There's an Altima LTMA 4899410. Please move it now. You're blocking someone.
Yes, I had to add that to the hot bar.
What about a Chevy Malibu? Was that injured during the course of the shooting?
I don't think it was, but I have to check. I didn't add that one to the hot bar. Chevy Impala, thank you very much.
Excuse me.
But let's double check on the Chevy.
They have a Chevy Impala, dark blue, 2203180. Please move, blocking the fire hydrant, and that is against the law. And so please move your Chevrolet before it is excised. Let the church say amen.
Now, Johnny, I told you I spent all weekend rebuilding the soundboard, so everything's in alphabetical order with all the clips we've added this year. So the way it's placed here, I've got Jesse Jackson Altima next to this clip. It just says Julie Fake Doctor.
Dr. Barbara Ferrer is a fake doctor.
Well, she's in a good neighborhood.
Johnny don't like.
If you'd like to email the show, you could do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
This one comes from AJ at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. He writes, subject line, Steve Garvey. Do you think he'd dress like John Fetterman if he's elected?
My guess is no. Although, who knows? Does Fetterman have a formal hoodie? Like if he's being casual, does it have a logo of a heavy metal band on the front? But if he's being formal, it's more of a designer hoodie. You know who does that is Hulk Hogan. When Hulk's in the ring, it's the yellow and red Hulk Rules bandana that he wears on his bald head. But if he's testifying in court, when it has something to do with Bubba the Love Sponge, he wears a black bandana.
That's the somber one.
Yes, he's showing respect to the judge. Steve Garvey has officially thrown his hat in the ring for California's open U.S. Senate seat. I guess it's not open anymore. We have an appointed incumbent. She hasn't decided if she's going to run for a full term. We already have 3 members of Congress running for that seat, all Democrats. Steve Garvey would be the first big-name Republican in the race. He is going to be here to talk to us about that at 2:35, so make sure you stick around for that. Coming up at the top of the hour, we're going to check in with John Thomas, who's a political strategist. He was the one that ran Todd Spitzer's race for re-election in Orange County for district attorney, and they turned that race into a referendum on George Gascon. And Todd Spitzer won a race the polls initially said lose, and he won in a blowout. Is that the winning ticket for Steve Garvey? We'll explore. Don't you go anywhere. We've got one more hour coming up right here on The John Phillips Show on Talk Radio 790 KABC.
It is hot as hell.